The last one you want to talk about here, Coach Prime. I got a lot of flack, Uncle Bob, over on the YouTube comments and everything for my take on Colorado picking them to go under 5.5 wins and everything. I just don't think this team's ultra talented. I think they get a lot of extra media attention and stuff, and people are hype on them because of Coach Prime there. But I still, like I told y'all last week, didn't think they did enough on those offensive lines. They do have the number one recruit on their offensive line now, but he's still a young guy there, and he's going to take some adjustments and all that. They did not look great against North Dakota State team. They trailed at half. Were able to battle back there and get it done, but did not cover the spread. And North Dakota State, actually, they really tried to screw that thing up at the end there. They should have been able to run that clock out. They're sitting there passing the ball, giving North Dakota State a chance they should have never had there. I feel like the refs missed a couple of key penalties on that last drive, a targeting penalty in particular that should have set North Dakota State up much better. I mean, they did complete that Hail Mary down to the 5 right at the end there. So Colorado, all those fans that were telling me, I had a lot of them saying 9-3 and a chance to win the Big 12, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think they have that chance at all. I think they're going to get blown out this weekend. This is used to be a traditional rivalry game when they were in the same conference and all that. So you go to Nebraska now and a team that's got a young quarterback they're very excited about. I did think Shadir Sanders played very good. I thought that guy had made some great plays, and Travis Hunter may very well be the best player in college football. I don't think you're going to miss on that guy wherever you draft him at. So, but for Colorado, for me, it's a lot of depth. And the way I saw them manage the end of that game last week against North Dakota State, I feel like the coaching staff's going to screw this thing up at some point too. How do you feel about this one?
Well, I think they're playing for Sanders and Hunter's draft stock.
Mm-hmm.
They're not playing for Colorado. I don't know how many. It wouldn't surprise me if that whole coaching staff is gone at next year, not because they're fired, but because they're playing for future positions of their star players in back in the league. That's my takeaway. Now, the no questions, Sanders is fantastic at quarterback. They have elite talent at quarterback, both top 2 wide receivers, at cornerback and safety. Then there's just a massive drop off. There's a lot of average players on the rest of the roster. And if you get any injuries, you've got below average everywhere else. So that's the risk with Colorado. They feel like a high variance team, a high boom or bust team that as the season drags on and injuries accumulate, they're in trouble. Now for Sanders, for their offense to work, they need to keep him upright. Nebraska sacked him 8 times last year. And if it wasn't for all the disastrous quarterback play from Nebraska, they would have beat Colorado in Boulder. So now they got to travel to Lincoln in the second year of Matt Rule's system, where he always excels when he gets to that second year, with baby Mahomes, the son of the famed offensive lineman Dominic Raiola at quarterback. And it's clear that guy has watched tons. I mean, he trains with Mahomes people, but tons of Mahomes film, because he's the first quarterback since Mahomes to throw like Mahomes. Do like the sidearm thing,
the weird stuff,
this thing and this thing, and has that sort of celebratory joy in the way he plays.
It's
they're
fun
going
to watch.
Love him in Lincoln. I mean, they're already be figuring out what statues to build around this. That's the best quarterback they've probably ever had in the history. Tommy Frazier did what he could do. This guy's at a different level. And the defense is good. It was a top 10 defense last year. They didn't really lose anybody. No reason to think they're going to be any weaker this year. This is a great test, though, because, Colorado lines up 4 wide. They still can't run the ball. They're a little better at pass protection because of that very talented young left tackle. But he is a true freshman now playing on the road in Lincoln against that defensive line and against those defensive schemes of one of the most well-respected defensive coordinators in the country. So this is a moneymaker game for Sanders. Can Sanders do something against that defense? The well-respected defense on the road. And can Raiola, as the true freshman in his first big game, manage it well? Not take too many gambles, take too many risks, take too many chances. Because that's almost Colorado's only chance is to play high-risk football. Line up 4 guys, throw it deep, try to show off for Sanders, try to hit some big plays. And on defensively, gamble. You cannot line up and let them run all over you the way at times North Dakota State did. So that means you're going to have to run blitz. You're going to have to scheme. You're going to have to attack. You're going to have to try to invite Raiola to take risky throws downfield. So nobody knows anything about this defensive coordinator. He's never been a defensive coordinator in his life for Colorado. So last week he played a bunch of single high man coverage. And if he does that against Nebraska, they're going to get torched. So if he'll get torched throughout the rest of the season. Now, maybe that was because of the unique running ability of the North Dakota State quarterback, and that's why they did what they did. He comes from the Bengals, and the Bengals defensive coordinator is one of the most creative in the league with a different game plan week in, week out, week in, week out. So if Colorado comes up with a great game plan, a high-risk game plan, that's a total change defensively from last week, offensively is similar but even more aggressive, then Colorado can go into Lincoln and pull the shocker because they have enough top-line talent to do it as long as they don't get hurt. But they need to scheme it up. If they just try to play mano-a-mano, the Nebraska can run the ball, Colorado can't. And that usually whoever wins that game in the trenches wins at home. So I think it's either going to be Nebraska big. I think the variance on this is high. Like, I wouldn't mind taking a Nebraska alt line of 13.5 and taking Colorado straight on the money line because it feels like a high variance game. And that's what Colorado's been under Coach Prime. I love Coach Prime. If he's not SWAC, who's SWAC? In the legendary language of Dion.
That's right.
But I think he's mostly there not to keep Colorado sustainable. He's there to get his kid a first-round draft pick in the NFL and his second kid a third-round draft pick in the NFL. I think that's what Colorado's really playing for this year, even if they won't admit it.
I feel very much that way also. And you saw North Dakota State early on in that game last week. Now, Colorado did kind of short up in the second half and look much better. But early on, I think they had an 8-minute drive in the first quarter or something like that. And that's where that depth on the defensive line, like we talked to y'all about. Everybody said they revamped that thing and it looked good. But, I mean, I don't see a lot of depth on that defensive line. And I also don't see a lot of overall talent that's just going to, separate you in some of these big games that they got coming up here. And with Nebraska at home in that spot, and a traditional rivalry game and all that, I am definitely leaning Nebraska in this one. And it didn't hurt my feelings at all seeing that game against North Dakota State last week after taking the under 5.5 wins. Everybody told me I was a fool and I was going to be I donated my money and all this. I don't feel bad about it at all after seeing that game last week, Bob.
Yeah, and I think, the issue is that they are, once they lose players and have some attrition, they have no depth. So that's a big problem down the season. And, this game will tell us a lot. Is this Colorado coaching staff coaching to boost the draft stock of key players, or are they coaching for Colorado? Because, for example, if they're coaching for just the draft stock of key players, then they will be in a bunch of single high all-man coverage because they're just trying to get as much game tape for Travis Hunter as possible, right? But that is not a defense you should play in college football very often.
No.
And, last week, almost 70% of the snaps, they were in that defense. No other team in college football had more than 56%, and the average was around 30%, to give people an idea. They're playing an extreme defense. Maybe it was schematically for that team, or maybe all they care about is showing off Shiloh Sanders at free safety and showing off Travis Hunter as corner. And if that's the case, you're going to have a lot of betting opportunities against Colorado this year.
Because that is a very drastic disparity there. When you talk about there's 70% of the plays they're in that formation, and you got the majority of college football only doing it 30% of the time. That one high safety is not a great defense against the new age offenses that we see nowadays. So I think you're right there. That's an interesting take, and I like that angle. I do think they're playing for those guys' draft pick stock, and that will change up the schematics that they're going to do throughout the course of the season. And a lot of times, I think it's going to put them in bad spots.
It's a good live betting opportunity because if you see that, if you see them playing all four wides to show off Shadir and playing that man covered single high early in the game, live bet the over because all they care about is scoring points. They don't care how many points they give up as long as Travis Hunter looks good man on man, as long as Shiloh Sanders looks good on man on man.
I